Hello, good afternoon. Um, Welcome everybody. This is Terry Dreyer, the AIA NOLA President 2020, and I appreciate all of you all attending. Welcome to the first installment of the AIA Storytelling Series that we are kicking off with a wonderful, brave architect in our local community. Before I introduce him, I want to tell you briefly about the storytelling series and what it's about. It's an opportunity to engage our members in who, what, why, and how our local architects have effectively mastered their profession and their lives. Who they are, how and why they became architects, what do they do professionally and personally. We are very grateful to Stephen Darre, who is the Director of Design Build Services for Broadmoor. He's been working in the profession for 11 years, graduated from LSU in 2009. One of the reasons we chose Stephen is because of his thoughtful approach to this profession, how he has mastered the bridge of architecture and construction for good architecture work and teamwork while creating a desperately needed niche in our profession. So welcome, Stephen, and the show is yours. Thank you
All
again.
right. Thanks a lot, Terry. So I'm going to talk to y'all about kind of what I do and how I got there, what Broadmoor does from a design build standpoint. To start that, I'll give you a little bit of background, how I got into this position. Terry already touched on it. Graduated from LSU Architecture School in 2009. Right when I graduated, I started getting my master's in business from UNO while working at Lakeen Oubre Architects. Now they're Lakeen Architects. I did that for a little while, decided to go back and just focus on wrapping up my MBA full-time. While I did that, I did some freelance architecture work. And when I was finished graduating, I decided to switch into construction. Some of the courses that I took during my MBA were project management and some law courses. And luckily, the lawyer that taught those courses focused on construction and architecture law. And it was pretty interesting and eye-opening, some of the cases she brought up. So I thought, let me kind of jump into project management and see how that goes. My focus on when I went and worked for Skanska at the LSU Medical Center, my focus was on the MEP trades, managing those subcontractors, a lot of work at the hospital. And I got into BIM coordination. That was in 2011. BIM coordination was kind of just starting. It's definitely still evolving, pretty interesting. So after I dealt with that for a while, I went over to Broadmoor. Since I've been at Broadmoor, I've worked my way into this director of design build role, and I've had an evolving set of design build projects that we've focused on, and I'm going to bring you through a few of those. They each have a slightly different aspect to them that I think there's some good talking points that we can bring up. The first job, right when I started at Broadmoor, was George Washington Carver School. It was a design build job. There was a bridging set of documents, schematic design or so that had been completed. We partnered up with Manning Architects to take over, to get the job, take over from that bridging set, complete the design and construction. It was very different than the atmosphere I had been in previously because, working for a contractor, we had a decent relationship with the architect, but it was always, make sure that we have our defense in place when the architect comes. And it was not a team environment. 180 degrees to how Broadmoor viewed it when, we had the architect contractually working for us, sitting at the table, and it was a team. And I think that's the biggest thing from a design build standpoint is you have to know that you're a team, you got to support each other, know each other's strengths and weaknesses. Working through that design was great because we knew our strengths. Like I said, we knew the budget. We have a full estimating team of 5 or 6 people looking at budgets. The architect knew what they had to do. We could work through details. It was a much more collaborative process. We'd bring subs to the table. I'll go through a few specifics on how the subs gave us input. It really helped develop the design, so that you don't have an architect working on one drawing and a subcontractor saying, well, this is really how I'm going to build it. It's not always the easiest process, but it brings a ton of efficiency to the project, which is not just an easier process, but everybody makes more money at the end. I know from a standpoint of when we're budgeting our jobs, and when I've looked at budgets in the past when I worked for architecture firms or the contractor, it's you always get to construction documents when you're wrapping them up, you're running out of money, and that's always the biggest time crunch for firms. So knowing how to see ahead and what details you need to develop, what details you don't need to focus on, really helps the system overall. Construction administration on that job went really well. There was since we were technically the architect on that job, even though Manning did all the architecture. We divided up submittals to where, hey, Broadmoor is going to review these submittals, Manning is going to review these. There was some overlap there, but windows, for instance, we handled that submittal. We didn't have to rely on the architect to give another stamp or anything because we were the architect. The liability was on us. That saved a ton of time. Site inspections and walks were much easier. There was just a lot of efficiencies that you can pick up being on a team together. The next job was marine systems that I worked on here. We did all of that in-house. It was a smaller project, so we didn't need to go out to another architecture firm. And that's one of the biggest things that we focus on is we've got an architecture group of 3 people. We have a BIM coordinator, a project architect, and me. We're not here to replace architecture firms or take their work away. 95% of our design build work is with other architecture firms. This was a small job. We didn't really see the need to bring on somebody else. And we actually picked, and it is a good thing that we didn't, because we picked up on some more efficiencies that we try to replicate when we're working with other firms. There was a couple of items up front that I thought were interesting. When I started working out the design, I was coursing out some windows and doors for certain brick. And this was around schematic design and the schematic design development. And our estimating team, we were sitting down one day and they're like, look, you're over budget on brick. We had, kind of had this price range, so switched to a different size. And I was like, I already got everything coursed out. Let's work out this some other way. So we went through it and I looked at his carpet budget, and he had more money than we needed. It was a warehouse with a little office. And I was like, we don't need that much money for carpet. Let's shift some of that over to the brick. We revised a few things in the drawings, problem solved. Problem solved in 30 minutes. There's that type of instance where we've come across these situations, making sure the design meets the budget. And we did that even before we weren't even locked into a GMP with the owner yet. So we could have easily said, well, let's try to add that to the budget and go back to him. But we knew the owner's budget from the start. So we knew, like, contractually, we're not held to the number yet, but we can make this work. So it's a give and take mentality that really helps. Another situation, and it kind of goes back to some of the detailing I was talking about. We were looking at the job site. It was still a green field, didn't even have a stake in the ground. We were kind of doing some surveying and looking around, noticed that there was a drywall company right next door. So we went over and talked to them, showed them our schematic design. Guy's like, let me get you a price on it. And I was like, well, I don't have all the details done yet. And he had another set of drawings, and because we were talking about, they want a fur down right here. We want to have a little feature in the lobby. And he pulled up another set of drawings. He's like, you want this detail, and this detail, right? I'm like, yeah. And this was a subcontractor. He's like, let me email them over to you. We'll go from there. Well, he got, we priced out the job to multiple subs. He got that job because he had that mentality of, let's not redo extra work. And that's what we do with subs a lot. We have our specific pool of subs. We don't do a lot. We do some public work, some hard bid, but a lot of our work is repeat clients. And that's how we like to have our consultants and subcontractors, is repeat trade partners. We'll send out, 3, 4, however many bids we need to. We'll get those numbers back in from trades. But we don't always go with the lowest bidder. We do a full evaluation. We take price into consideration. We take safety. We take past experience, and we take, hey, look at the design drawings we have, and give us your evaluation. What would you do differently? What would be an easier construction method? Think outside the box. We analyze that. We have a scoring system, and that's how we pick our trades, so that we're not in a situation where we're worried about getting change orders from subcontractors, because all of our contracts, not all of our contracts, but a lot of our design build contracts, or they have a GMP and it's CM at risk. So we need to be able to manage, we have to manage that construction contingency. We can't just go back to the owner with a change order because, oh, we missed this. No, we have to know the drawings. The way that we do that, which kind of brings me into my next project, we're currently doing a large design build hotel. And a lot of the questions I get from other architects when we're talking is, well, how do you guarantee that price to an owner? And how do you know that how does an owner know that you're not just going to go back and change order them every time you pick up something? Well, we don't get a set of documents when they're complete or almost complete and send it out for bid for 2 weeks and then submit a price. If that's the case, and we do that on a lot of jobs when we're just getting documents like that, but once again, this is design build. You only get to know the drawings for 2 weeks if that's the case. This, current job that we have, we've been working on it since 2018, maybe the end of 2017, and our estimating team was there when we kicked off the job. They were there at the end of schematic design. We actually broke it out a little differently. We had a foundation set, we had a structural set, we had interiors. But every step of the way, our estimators were looking at it and evaluating the drawings, so that some of our estimators honestly know the architecture drawings better than I do. That way we have a comfort level of, all right, Mr. Owner, we're going to guarantee you this price. Here's what we included. Here's what we excluded. Let us know what you think. That way there's no surprise change orders after the fact, because in the CM at risk contract, we're at risk. That brings me into some more of the high points of that job. Design scheduling. I was always terrible at managing the schedule. I'd say, all right, we need 4 weeks for that, 2 weeks for this, and then you just kind of crunch at the end and figure out how you're going to get this deliverable due. Staying up all night to go through Revit and go through the sheets. We implement Design Last Planner, which is a lean concept. I'm sure some of y'all heard of that. It's a concept where you basically just bring everybody to the table, every engineer, every architect, every consultant, whoever, all at the table, and you go through what people's needs are. So you don't just say, all right, design development is due 3 months from now. You say, all right, what constitutes design development? Sometimes we have to use those terms, and sometimes we say, no, look, it's going to be levels 1 through 4 interiors package. It's going to be a structural package. It'll be, whatever kind of package is going to be focused on. And we say, define that deliverable. Once everybody defines it out, then they say, all right, electrical engineer, in order for you to give us that panel schedule that we need so that we can go price that out, who needs to give you what? And he's going, well, the mechanical engineer needs to give me X, Y, and Z. All right, so that'll be, a week and a half before your deliverable. So you have that time to draw and design. Mechanical engineer, in order for you to give that information to electrical engineer, what do you need? Well, I need owner sign off on these walls being locked. I need the architect to finish that RCP. I need a few other things. All right, architect, you're going to have that due 3 weeks before the final submission. And we work backwards like that to clearly define um, those specific scopes, so that when we get to the last day, it's not like, well, he didn't have that to me in time, I need 2 more weeks. Now, an issue that we've come across with that is sometimes we're at a stage where certain things can't be defined. We need to price something, but the mechanical engineer says, I can't produce a drawing for that at this stage. So we've learned from that and said, all right, maybe at an upfront package, the architect or the engineer doesn't need to give us a drawing. We've literally had packages due where normally an owner would be like, well, why don't I see a drawing? Because that drawing is going to change so many times from now. What we're doing is we have a narrative. So we'll give them, 2 pages of a Word document where the engineer just describes out what his system is going to need to be, what some of the requirements are going to need to be, some of the loads, where we take that, send it out to our trusted subcontractors that we have a history with, and we know that they have the knowledge and the capacity to handle that. And they're going to start to kind of price up a rough order of magnitude for us, whereas a drawing might not portray everything they need to know. So that's a little something that we've started to do that has helped us evaluate where a design is and where it needs to go. Another problem that we've come across, and we still don't have a perfect solution, but it's bidder fatigue. A bidder's not pricing 100% CDs one time and seeing if he gets the job or not. We're going out for pricing multiple times so that we can accurately do target value delivery. We can track that budget. By the last round of bids, a bidder might be the 4th time that they're bidding it. Now, obviously, it's a little easier for them to bid it the 4th time because they already have their previous ones that they're working off of. But they do start to say, like, man, I hope this is the last time we're bidding this. So it's not always ideal for them, but if they want the job, they're gonna do it. And usually by that time, we know, and we've worked with the owner. We know who's in it, who's given us the best input. We've worked with, I don't know if I should name drop, but we've worked with Zinsel Glass on this project, and we've brought them in to help define some design criteria and some of the scope, because we knew the glass package was going to be big on this job, and we needed to figure out exactly what was going to go into it beforehand. It was the skin of this project. Instead of traditional brick, it was all precast and hung in precast panels on the side of the building. So we had to get that glass knocked down for those openings. So we'll bring on priority subs. The glass was an instance of one pool. We have a rooftop pool. We bring in priority trades that we tell the owner, like, look, we're not under contract yet with them. We can bid this out, but we'd like to get their knowledge up front. And so that helps the bidding process. That helps our process. An example where we kind of had to sell the owner on that, because owners still want to go back to, I want 3 bids. I want to see the prices. We're going with the low bid. We had 2 previous jobs where we had rooftop pools. One, we went with a pool subcontractor that was a little more expensive, but it was a turnkey package, and the final product was amazing. We had another project where we did a rooftop pool, not a turnkey package. We took on a lot of the work ourselves, and we went with the low number. It was a nightmare for 6 months to get that pool figured out. The amount of time we spent just on that pool, we actually quantified at the end of the job, and it wasn't worth it. There was just issues all along the way to save the owner a dime, and we ate through our budget. So we showed up, the owner of this job, look, this guy is a little pricier, but he's got this information, he's got this knowledge, as opposed to the other way around. And it's a good owner. He agreed, he agreed to entertain that. We actually brought in, and at first I thought this was a little crazy. We brought in the pool consultant on day 2 of design. We had our full team together. Day 1, we were working through some items. Day 2, we brought in the pool guy. And thank God we did, because he brought in a lot of knowledge that he's had from similar projects, to where the structural engineer is like, I would not have thought to do that. Let's adjust from there. So that kind of bridges the gap from budgeting, having an accurate budget, target budget for the owner, and bringing on priority subs. it's not always the best situation because subs do get a little aggravated sometimes, but it is what it is. It's better in the long run, by far. Some other key points to that job is the big room concept, where I mentioned the design last planner or the last planner system, which is a lean concept. Big room is also another lean concept. When we kicked off this job, we did a 3-day big room meeting, which was our first time doing that, and we were continuing to do that. Not always 3 days, it depends on the size of the job. We worked with a great architect. I like this architect a lot. He was with Callison RTKL out of Texas. And he was like, we're not having a 3-day meeting. This schedule that y'all put out in this planner system is ridiculous. He put us on blast hard. And so it was a little nerve-wracking going into that meeting. He agreed to do the meeting. And he went from being our enemy on day one to loving us the last day. He wanted to work with us again. Huge, advocate for lean design now. He's sent us videos that we've posted just because he just absolutely loved it. He said we got more work done in that 3-day big room than he's gotten done on other jobs in 3 months. And that's not a lie, because we had engineers tell us the same thing. The keys behind a big room is, once again, just like design last planner, get everybody in the room for the high level discussions to see what needs to happen. You get the owner there to go over their program. You have contractors kind of talking about how they see that program being built to influence the architect. One of the topics that came up, and we had used this system before in jobs, is this was a 14-story building with brick on one side going all the way up, and it was traditional brick that the architect was thinking, well, it's in the warehouse district, so we don't have a lot of street access. Putting scaffolding up for months was going to be logistically challenging. So we, on day one brought up, well, what if we, use a slender wall type system, hang the brick? They didn't like that idea at first. So we brought him out to one of our job sites where we've used it before. And he actually he's like, this looks exactly how I envisioned true brick to be on this. So he agreed to it. That, from a cost standpoint, the precast brick wasn't necessarily any cheaper than traditional brick. But when you take into the logistics of it, taking months of scaffolding, safety, trying to build out over a street, and convert those months into, a few weeks of hanging, that can create a big benefit for the owner. So the big room concept is about having everybody there to review ideas like that influence the design. All those design details were now different. We helped give input to those, as opposed to the architect working in his silo, and not really hearing any other input. We did the same thing with mechanical and electrical. And it worked out really, really well in the long run. It's a very effective way of planning out a job. If anybody's interested in that more, I'd definitely say to look into the big room concepts. That's where you bring in your trade partners and everybody. Another item from that job that has been a big benefit, but has also caused us some issues that we've got to figure out in the long run. Some lessons learned is bringing on BIM. So I mentioned we have a BIM manager in-house. Usually BIM coordination is done, during construction. It's like a dry run for actually building it, but it's all done after construction documents are complete. We started our BIM coordination during design development. I wasn't sure how that was going to go at first. We had some kickback, not from the architect, but just from some of our trades. The architect thought it was great because as they were designing, we were kind of modeling through it and seeing how things were coming together. I can tell you right now, it helped out the electrical engineer and the electrical contractor drastically, because we had the contractor thinking that they were going to, run cable trays and conduits in certain areas that we couldn't do that. So that it freed up some time for the electrical engineer to kind of design per what the BIM coordination showed them. So it helped them out a lot, saved us a lot of issues that we would have not known until we got into the field. So that was some of the successes of it, was kind of having that model influence the design. Some of the issues we've had with it, starting at that early of a stage, was with the plumbing. Some of that wasn't completely defined. Some plumbing fixtures, kitchen equipment, mechanical units wasn't baked into the design yet. So doing those coordination efforts caused some rework. In the long run, it worked out well because they were still going to have to do that anyway, but it did require some additional steps from the mechanical engineer. We're still trying to work through how to better that. But for our first time doing BIM coordination, at a DD level, I think the architect was very happy with how that kind of influenced the design. Another item that we've had pluses and minuses with, but I think a lot more pluses, is how to filter RFIs. I know I hated this when I just worked for an architect, and I was probably guilty of it sometimes when I worked as a contractor, but just shooting out RFIs that don't have any problem solving to them. It's an RFI that says, hey, this isn't working, Mr. Architect, fix it. We try to filter that a lot. Some of our guys are better at design build than others. Well, we have our staff architect. He is now on this bigger job, kind of filtering everything. So if we put an RFI in Procore, it goes to him first, and he says, all right, this is a legitimate question. Let me sketch out a little detail. We'll send it to the architect for his approval. Or he might say, guys, we're not sending this to the architect. Do this. The information's here. Keep moving. We're doing that now because it is easy to get 6 people on a job site that are all working and just start pinging the architect with questions and wasting their time. So and it's still we're still working through that. We don't have that perfected in any way, shape, or form, but I think it's a big step from the days of when you just pinging the architect, say get that in his court, so he's got 2 weeks to answer it. This helps free up their time for other things, especially because as architects, we don't usually have a giant CA budget to deal with that, but contractors have much bigger CA budgets. So that's RFI, BIM, construction administration standpoint. Another item that we do that has been, I think, the biggest benefit to the owner is how we contract our design build work. So we're one point of contact for an owner. We don't have a design build contract for us with the owner and the architect with the owner. We're the sole person, and I'm the one point of contact within Broadmoor for that. So if there's ever a design issue or a construction issue or a lot of issues have a lot of gray in there. An architect can blame a contractor can blame an architect. The owner's calling me, and it's my responsibility to figure it out. In this current job that I've been referencing, the architect has no contract with the owner at all. It's directly with us, so we have to figure that out, whether it's design issue, whether it's a budget issue. The architect's also under our insurance. As a construction company and a design build construction company, we have much higher insurance than a typical design firm would have. We have professional liability insurance as well as typical construction insurances. That's a benefit to the architect, as more of the risk is on us, and we can handle those limits that some owners would require. But going back to the point of contact discussion, the owner loves just calling me up and just wearing me out on certain items, and I think on a construction end, you're typically more used to taking that. But the approach is, we can help the design team figure out those items, because at the end of the day, we can't just point the finger and say, well, hey, it wasn't designed. We own the design. This job, the architect of record is actually not us, but it still goes through us. So I think that helps kind of where we're the filter from the field, we're also the filter from the owner. So it's been a big benefit, I would think. Some more items that we try to implement on our design build jobs or from a lean standpoint. We talk about big room, design last planner, and we also try to define our packages a little differently. Everybody likes to use SD, VD, and CD. I think it makes the owner feel a little more comfortable sometimes, but we're finding it's not as efficient as some other ways of doing it. It's another lean concept. If anybody is familiar with the Lean Construction Institute, one of our project executives here, Greg Luzion, founded the New Orleans chapter, and we've been very involved in that. And we break out our packages when possible to say, we have a foundation package, a structural package, a architectural interiors package, an exterior package, front of house, back of house, whatever the job really requires or defines as the needs of the design. We break it down that way so that everybody on the team knows where they need to focus. Hey, what part of my mechanical scope is going to affect the structure? Well, let's focus on that right now, because that's what we're going to be pricing. The structure is a big hot money item. So we need to have that locked down up front so that the owner can evaluate, all right, we're looking like we're on budget. Let's keep moving. So that's really kind of an overview of how we handle our different design build jobs. A lot of efficiencies come out of it. There's still some work to be done. But I guess at this point, is there any questions from anybody on certain things you heard during that conversation? And what could I expand on?
We'll give folks a minute to type in anything that they're thinking of.
Okay. I think some other points that have come up in jobs that have been successful is the submittal review. That's always a big cumbersome item where contractor has 2 weeks to review, then the architect has 2 weeks to review, the engineer reviews it, owner, whoever. We've done pretty well on certain jobs to where we try to combine the reviews. A couple of things that we've done is one job, we used Bluebeam Studio so that the architect, contractor, engineer, we were on that at the same time. We each had our own colors. Going through the submittal concurrently saved a couple of weeks in the project. We have to obviously do our legwork first because we don't want to have a review with the architect if the submittal's not there, completely, and there's a lot of issues. So we have to do some upfront legwork, but collaborative reviews has been a big help in getting through submittals. We had that Marine Systems warehouse job that I had mentioned. The prefab metal building was a massive submittal undertaking, and our project manager looked at it first a few times, sent it back to be revised to the metal building guy. And, he had some phone calls for me on, hey, how do you want to see this? And he sent me a few pages of the submittal. After he had it back to a point where he thought it was adequate, we sat down at the table one day and we went through it together for about 3 hours. And there was stuff that he picked up that I wouldn't have picked up, and vice versa. And that 3 hours was way more productive of a time than if he had sent it to us and I took 2 weeks to do it. Did it isolated from him. That collaborative nature to submittal review has been a big help because everybody looks for something different. I've actually learned a lot from working with some of our project managers on what they look for in a submittal. I'm like, yeah, that's not something I would have, as an architect, not something I would have looked at. So I think that's something that, even if it's not a design build job, if you have the appropriate relationship between the architect contractor, a collaborative submittal review is a big benefit to the team. With that said, I think we got some comments in the chat. let's see, how do you select firms to team with, or does the client select with the you with the architect? It depends on the project. So in the past, we've teamed up with architects on certain jobs. We'll get a request for proposal from an owner, and it's on us to select who we want to work with. It all depends on the history and preference. We've also been in situations where an architect will go out for bids to other contractors at an early stage and say, this is going to be, one of them wasn't even going to be design build. It was going to be just a CM at risk further down the line. And they were just getting kind of a rough evaluation of where they were on a budget. And that turned into a design build. The architect liked what he saw. And, so they brought us on. It could really go either way. Like I said, it's not public hard bid work. It's more private money. But we're always looking at different ways to team up with firms to do that. What made you choose architecture as a profession? Honestly, I always wanted to be an Imagineer, work for Disney. And so I went to architecture school because that's what people said to do. The funny thing is, after I accepted a job at Skanska, I got a job offer for a professional internship with Disney Imagineering, and I turned it down. Don't ask me why. Skanska was a hard job, learned a lot, but not Imagineering. So, and I think I just always liked buildings and architecture and things like that. Now, why I went from architecture to construction has probably multiple reasons. When I went and got my MBA and I took some of those project management classes, my eyes were kind of open to, man, I've been working as an architect and I didn't realize, some of these things went into construction. And so I was kind of curious about how the other side works, because as an architect, I was butting heads with contractors all the time because it's what we did. So it was interesting to see the other side of things. Once I saw the other side, I was still an architect, licensed, and I thought design build would be a better approach to it because I saw pros and cons on both ends. I still obviously tend to take the side of the architect when any issue comes up, but I can see the construction side of it too. So I think, design build isn't a perfect system, but it's definitely a happy medium. And it's been much more enjoyable working in design build than some past situations where you got to go to work and think you're going to have a fight every day. How do you engage for a more collaborative experience with architect, basically providing trust in the team? Trust is actually one of the biggest points of lean design. I mentioned in the past, go check out Lean Construction Institute. I think it's hard for a lot of people to trust at first. The only way to get past that is, have the situation prove that you can trust somebody. I've been in rooms where structural engineers do something a certain way, and we'll bring in a steel erector in the room who's like, well, this is how we do it in the field. And once they kind of sit, and they'll butt heads sometimes, it happens. You have to come to a conclusion. Everybody has to agree at some point. It's not always hard to get there. It's not always easy to get there. But whether it's the engineer that gets his way, or the steel guy that gets his way, or it's a combination of both, which is typically, nobody's ever 100% right. So it's usually a collaborative effort. Then they realized, wow, that was actually, I learned something. He knows what he's talking about on that end. The next project that comes along, then you have that trust. We're in a lucky position to where we can bring in past trade partners and engineers. So we've built that relationship with them. And it's always hard the first time you get somebody that you don't know, there is no trust there. Something that also helps though is, in that big room, if you bring in a new person and they see that team, it's eye-opening for them. And like, wow, these guys work together. You know, it's an industry where people don't work together. What are they doing? They see that family type environment and you build it. And the hard thing is that's not something that you can quantitatively put in a contract. Like, you will trust the people you work with. You can't do that. But it's kicking off on the right foot, making sure people see that collaborative atmosphere is what really helps. I don't see any more items in the chat. Let me click on the Q&A. Is there any formal language in the contract around collaborative submittal review? Does this also work with RFIs and change orders? The LCI has come out with a lien amendment to their contract. It's not an AIA document. I checked maybe a year ago on if AIA had anything, and they didn't, but they were working towards it. We have taken some standard language from the LCI, and it wasn't the design build documents. It was the name slipping in my mind of what contractual documents it was. But they have a lien amendment that I think it's like Amendment 305. I can share with everybody after this, that has lien terms in it that discuss some of those items. It's been very beneficial, and we actually put some of that into our contracts. It doesn't necessarily get down to you have to have a collaborative submittal review, or it does have, you know, verbiage about change orders and whatnot, but it takes you through the whole process of, you know, when you can bring people on board and how you need to evaluate situations. It's a really good document that everybody should read. So I'll definitely get that information out to everybody, because it's worth a look at. But from a, you know, we don't say that you're required to do collaborative submittals, but it helps. And look, it's not always possible. We have submittals sometimes that are incorrect, get shot back to us. But, you know, you take each project at a time. I do know we're doing prefabricated walls on this project. All the plumbing walls are prefabricated. The studs, the plumbing components are in there. And so that was an extensive submittal review, actually much more extensive than we expected it to be, because we modeled everything in 3D, full BIM coordination. Every stud locked down for prefab. You know, we had to move them all. So it took a lot of time up front. But I would say that was a very collaborative submittal review, because every Tuesday we had the architect, our BIM manager, the prefabber, and the plumber in a room going through the model. So it took a lot of time. I don't think it necessarily took less time to do that submittal review because of how extensive it was. But now everything's prefabricated. The architect can inspect items, you know, in a shop. We can do the same thing. So anything like that helps. You just got to think outside the box. I think there might be one more. Nope, I think that was the last question. Any other questions? Let me know what y'all think.
Steve, thank you so much. Could you touch on a little bit? Hey, y'all, this is Terry. Could you touch on a little bit about what you do in your personal life to relieve stress? What are some of the things that you have identified in your life that with your professional degree has helped you in this process, whether it's, you know, analytical reasoning or communication skills helped or not helped? And then I would ask one other question as a follow-up for the idea of sharing submittals is, do you still share submittals if the liability for the submittals still falls on the architect? Even, I mean, I know you're required to, but how does that work if you're not, and then maybe I missed this, but how does that work if you're not acting as the licensed architect? And then I guess you could answer that question and then probably much end on the personal part. Thank you.
Yeah. So we've actually, every design build job we've done since I've been here, and it's been over 6 years, the liability has fallen on us contractually, even if we're not the architect of record. His current job, we're not the architect of record. And they'll still put their, reviewed stamp on it, and we'll still put our stamp on it. So from that standpoint, it's the same. We get back, and I think their stamps, say reviewed. They don't say approved. They'll say reviewed as noted or reviewed or whatever. But after our collaborative, meetings and reviews, everybody still puts their stamps like you would. Typically, we still post it in Procore. Same thing with RFIs. When we're coming up with the solution for an RFI, sometimes I still fight with our field guys and say that doesn't even need to be an RFI. But they're going to say, no, look, it's our sketch. We still need to put it in as an RFI. The architect doesn't need to update the drawings. Sometimes he might, sometimes he might not. And we'll just take that sketch that we made, post it on on the architect's drawings with an RFI bubble. And contractually, he's the architect of record, but the insurance and the liability is on us. So some of that does come to contract terms, and you just have to be, aware of that. I think we're at a standpoint where we're comfortable. We have enough oversight during design that we're willing to take on that risk. On a personal side, I was mentioning to Terry before, I'm an artist. I'm an architect that doesn't do much creative design. They still let me do a little bit, not a whole lot, but I like to paint and draw on the side. From an architecture background, I draw a lot of buildings and things. So I'm a little, local starving artist as well as architect. That's kind of where I like to use my architecture skills. From a critical thinking standpoint, I got to be honest, my wife used to be an engineer, so she does a lot more critical thinking than I do. And I guess, I don't know, do you have any more to that question, Terry? I think that's where I use most of my architecture skills is in art outside of work. We usually do. They let me, paint or draw a picture for each client after we're done with the job that they can have. So that's about it. That's about it on that.
No, I was just trying to get you to speak more about what you do on the personal side, and that's accurate.
Yeah.
The one other question is, does Broadmoor go after public work? Because I'm trying to figure out how that liability lands. There's a liability clearly in the construction side because architects can only review, they can't accept the submittals and shop drawings. I just am curious if in the private sector how that works, but I guess that's really on a one-by-one basis and talks really more about the trust of the team and the design build approach. Just navigating that bridge is what I'm kind of really asking about. So with that being said, I think you already touched on it in reference.
Yeah.
You have to build the trust. You have to, we're all after one goal. So how do we work together so it manages expectations and provides still good architecture?
Yeah, we've done some public work. I haven't been involved with any of it because it's not design build or anything. That's just a little bit of what we do. And unfortunately, contracts aren't fully caught up to where they, need to be when it's a lean collaborative design like this. But it's moving in that direction. So it's really just working with the right people that you know and trust, which is not typically public hard bid work. So I haven't been involved with much of that since I've been here. Let me check. I don't see any other questions. So I think that's about it.
All right. Thank you so much, Stephen. We really appreciate you sharing your story. And thanks to everyone who joined us today. And we will be continuing this series in the upcoming weeks. Do you want to share your contact information in case people have particular questions?
Yeah, sure. So I'll send out something after, with that contract and my contact information. Right now, if you want to write it down, my email address is sdarre, that's SDARRE at broadmoorellc.com. And I'll send out all that later to anybody that attended today.
Great. All right. Thanks again, and everyone have a wonderful rest of your Friday.
Thanks.